It's Phil's here again from PHIXLAB. So in this video, I'll show you a Flutter stroke that list manipulation hack that will save you lots of time and respect on the job. Let's say you have a list of data that is being provided for you from the backend, and there's also a design that's provided for you by the design team. And these data are very inconsistent and they're not in sync. So in this video, I'll teach you how you actually manipulate this data to actually still reuse the user interface that was provided and also the endpoint. So in the course of this very video, what you're going to learn is going to save a lot of frustration. So what are you going to learn in this video? We're going to do about 4 things. So number one thing we're going to be actually learn is how to make an API request. This request is going to be a dummy type or a mock type of API request because we're not going to be hitting a real endpoint, but we'll still be able to retrieve our data. And after that, we should be able to create a podo class. This podo class is actually a class that we use to map the response that we actually receive from the internet to the UI. And then we're going to make the actual request. After that, we do the most important part of this tutorial, which is actually manipulating the list to conform with the UI. And after that, we're going to now design a custom UI for display. And after that, we're going to display our data to the UI. And then case finished. And let's get to it. So this is what we're going to be learning in this very video. We'll be able to read from a simulated API. All right, we're not going to be making a real network request. We're going to be making a dummy API request to retrieve a particular data. But the same structure we're going to use is actually the way you're going to do it on your API as well. To retrieve this list of JSON, and then we should be able to restructure this JSON and create a helper class for the new group of data, right? So that we need to be able to create a mapper class, right? What we call Pojo object or Pojo class, to actually map the response that we're getting from the API to a real life object that we can actually display on the app. Then we should be able to create a custom UI on number 4 that we actually match what they're going to provide for us, and then we'll be able to display this item. So let's first of all look at the problem that we're trying to solve. This is what you're going to learn along the line. So, and this is actually what involves almost every app that you're going to be working on the job. You will always have to probably make an API request, or probably from the database or from a local file like JSON or whatever, but this is just the normal structure. So where the pain point is in the number two is where we have a problem, because the data that is supplied from us to us from the API is not very friendly comparing it to what we have in the design. So, but we're going to figure out how to solve this problem. So let's look at this illustration. So we have this illustration. This is the app we're supposed to build in Sketch or in skeletal form. So we are supposed to read some designations. Designation is the title, and then we have this group of individuals. So in the PHIXLAB staffs, we have teachers, and the teachers, we have the names. So this is like expansion list style, so that when you tap on this, they expand and show you the children. All right. The admins has its own list of admins. The counselors have the list of counselors. So this is the response we are getting from the API, right? It has an object list, PHIXLAB star with a list of these objects. So each individual one has 4 fields: ID, name, age, and role. All right. So the role is supposedly what we're supposed to use to group these items. So, but this API response did not give us this information in an ordered format. So we have to find a way to make that happen for ourselves. Now, when you check out, you can see that we have about 8 items in the list, but this is actually what we would have loved if it actually come in this way, right? Because this is what is going to help us to be able to actually display this in a faster way, but we don't have option, right? So what we wanted is not given to us, so we have to make that by ourselves. So we would actually want, if this is a designation, teacher, members, and then we have another designation with the type, and then the list of members of that particular designation. But that's the problem now. We have to find a way to solve it. So the end goal is this. This is what we're going to look at to solve at the end of the day. So this is PHIXLAB. This is the real representation of this now. So we have designation, then we have teachers, and then you can see that we have this expansion tile. So when you toggle this expansion of teachers, it shows you all the people that fall into teachers. You can see that I have John Doe, Phil Jade here. So if you look at here, we can see that we have teacher is John Doe, teacher is also Phil Jade. Then other people are actually counselor and different type of designations. So you can see that it was grouped for here for this particular user here. So that being said, we have the problem, we have the goal and destination. These are the destination, and this is what we have as the problem to solve. But the problem now is how do we get this information? And that will take us back to what I just showed you. We first of all need to read this data from the JSON, from the API. Then we need to also restructure or group it. But in sequence, we're supposed to have this. So let's order this. Let's make this number 2. All right. So we first of all need to read the data from API, from local storage or where, and then we'll create a helper class that actually maps this very individual uh, data into something that can be represented in the app, and then we restructure that response afterwards. All right, and then we can create a UI that we use to display that, and then we'll display this item. So let's first of all go to the code. All right, so I'm going to take you to GitHub so where you can get the startup code for this very tutorial. So if you go to the link in the description, you'll find a link to this particular repository. This repository has a branch called starter. This starter branch is all you need to get started with this very tutorial, right? So this tutorial has it's going to be easy for you to get started because I've bootstrapped all the basic information that you need to start working on the code instantly. So right inside we have everything that you need. So I'm going to take you to Android Studio. So I'll assume you have been able to get this done. So just download the code, all right, and then import it in Android Studio, or you can also do it this way, which is faster. You copy this link, you hit HTTPS, and then you go to your Android Studio. I already have that downloaded. So if I open that, you can see I already have the PHIXLAB list project in this place. But if you open your Android Studio, you go to File, go to New, and then project from VCS or version control, then I can paste this very repository here, then I can click on clone. So if I click on clone, it's going to pull down this same data exactly. So having done that, then we are ready to start working through this code. So you can find this list in the description below. You'll be able to get access, and then you can continue from there. So what we'll be building on will be actually standing on top of this particular branch now to extend. So let's get to the code. Let me walk you through what we have right now in the code. So I'll open up the main.dat. The main.dat has just a basic starter project, all right? And I have just one screen. This screen, I called it PHIXLAB screen, staff list screen, right? And the staff list screen, we have just a basic widget without a content, just a title. And then if you look here, you can see that we have one particular function. This function is what we're using to make our API call. But in the progress of the video, we're going to actually organize this to be more organized and kind of user-friendly. And not just that, it's going to be best practices for us. So we're going to group everything we're going to be doing in sequences so that we can be able to have a basic nice structure for our project, right? The way you're actually supposed to do it on the job. All right, so this is what this function does. This function does the API request, and it pulls the data. This is supposed to be, if we're making a real-life API request, this is supposed to probably be our a URL to our endpoint that stores this particular JSON file, right? And we store the data here, which is what we should have done in API requests, because normally if you're using, let's say we're using HTTP or DIO to make a response, make a request. So once we get a response back, then we need to decode the response. And when we decode the response, which is what we're doing here, right? And then we need to map this very response to JSON, from JSON, so that we can actually have an object that is represented, and that is what we did here. So this takes me to the second step in the what we're going to learn. So if you go back to the link to the description here, we have read from our simulated dummy API, which is what I'm just trying to show you now. So after we've read from there, we need to create this mapper class. I'm going to show you, I've already created this class for you. So first of all, we've made this request. And how do we make the request? We are doing string data. Data is going, because this is going to be a list of JSON string, right? So I'm doing root bundle. The root bundle is from the service class. So natively it's coming from this place, right? So we are loading this very assets is actually coming from our asset folder. So we're loading a file called PHIXLAB staff.json, which is located in assets JSON PHIXLAB staff. And for that to happen, we also need to update our pubspec.yaml file, and then we need to tell our pubspec that we have an asset that we want to load, and the name of the asset is this asset JSON PHIXLAB staff.json. All right, so with that, we should be able to recognize. And another way we can also do that is having asset JSON without the name, and then we can pass the name at the same time at the URL, which will still work, right? Now, having done that, this is where the core thing is. This is supposed to be the endpoint that we're actually trying to call, and we are reading that response. We are reading that endpoint from here. So once we read the endpoint, we store the data in the JSON string, and then we actually decode that JSON string, and then we pass it with this PHIXLAB start from JSON. All right, this is what does the passing. So let's go and look at this very particular class. So this is the class that we are using to actually map our response to an object. So look at what it has. It has two classes. The parent class that actually wraps the overall stuff. If you check out the link again, if you go back to the browser and see our illustration, you see that we have PHIXLAB staff, which is the root thing, and then we have this the individual object. So this is supposed to be represented by a class, that will represent an individual staff with an ID, name, age, and role. If you go back to this place, you can see that we have staff with an ID, name, string, ID, name, age, and role, right? And then there's a list of them, because if you check on the link again, we have a list of these guys. So there's a list. This is an array of teachers, right? So that's why we have array of staffs. Sorry. So we have a list of staffs, and the key is PHIXLAB staff, which is what we have in this place. All right. So that being said, now we have actually been able to do that. And how did we do this? I'm going to take you to where I actually converted this. You can actually write this by yourself, but it's going to take you time. So for us to do that, we need to copy this very class, copy this. And how do you copy that? In your project, there's PHIXLAB staff.json, but I already done that for you, but I'm just trying to show you how you can do that in your next project. If you don't know how to do this, maybe you're a beginner, you just need to copy the response, the JSON response, the way I have it here, right? So if you copy that, you go to, I have this handy site that I normally use, right? So you paste this very file here, and then you call it any name, and then you can generate. So you can see it gave me a different name. I actually have to rework that. I have to make PHIXLAB staff to be the main staff, to be the main class. All right. So this is supposed to just be the staff, and then the other one will be the PHIXLAB staff. So for it to be a list of staffs, right? So that's what we're trying to achieve here. This is just to show you how to do that in case you are working on your next project and you don't have maybe a primer on how to begin, right? So we're using that, we've been able to actually convert our product class, which is this. This is what we're using here to map the response that we're getting. So if you see that we're returning PHIXLAB staff from JSON, so and that from JSON method, if you click command click, you see that this is from JSON. So it passes a string dynamic map, a map of string dynamic, which is a JSON file with a key of PHIXLAB staff. Then it is assigning the staff, all right, to a list, and then it's looping through individual of this, and then it's adding it to the staff, and it's adding individual staff from JSON as well, right? So because we have a staff from JSON here, so it's mapping the name, ID, age, like you saw here. All right, so it's adding V, which is an individual item of this, and it's mapping it and adding it to this particular list of staffs, right? And that's how the conversion is being done, or passing is being done, to get us a single staff that we can now be able to display. All right. So having done that, now we are going to, these are basically what we have in the app. So in the next video, we're going to continue to the next stage. All right. So we've been able to walk you through what we already have in the app. So if you also check in my init state here, you see that I have a call to that function fetch staff. So I have a nullable staff object, and I am assigning whatever I have fetched from this very place to the staff, and I'm using this to, because this is original, if this is null, then assign this to it. All right, then I'm printing the first name of that particular first staff. All right, so start to organize our codes and take it to the next step. So I'll see you in the next video.